Cutting a vent into a NEMA 4 enclosure will compromise its original NEMA 4 rating. NEMA 4 enclosures are specifically designed to provide protection against environmental factors such as splashing water, rain, sleet, snow, wind-blown dust, and dirt, as well as incidental dripping or seepage. The introduction of a vent, which creates an opening in the enclosure, provides a potential pathway for these elements to enter, thereby reducing the overall protection level that the enclosure is designed to offer. The location of the vent also plays a crucial role in determining the extent to which the NEMA 4 rating is compromised. Vents that are cut into the bottom or sides of the enclosure are generally less prone to allowing water to enter compared to vents located on the top or front surfaces. This is primarily because water naturally flows downwards and tends to accumulate in lower areas. Therefore, vents positioned in these lower locations are less likely to be directly exposed to rainfall or splashing water. However, if the enclosure is located in an area where water can pool or accumulate, even vents on the sides or bottom could be susceptible to water ingress. To minimize the negative impact of the vent on the NEMA 4 rating, several mitigation measures should be considered and implemented. Firstly, it is essential to select a vent design that is specifically engineered to be watertight. When choosing a vent, look for products that are certified to meet NEMA 4 or I67 standards. These certifications indicate that the vent has been tested and proven to effectively prevent water from entering the enclosure, even when exposed to challenging environmental conditions. Secondly, proper installation of the vent is paramount to maintaining the integrity of the enclosure's protection. Always adhere strictly to the manufacturer's instructions during the installation process. Use appropriate sealing materials such as gaskets or sealants to create a watertight barrier around the vent opening. This will help to prevent water from seeping into the enclosure through any gaps or imperfections in the installation. Thirdly, carefully consider the location of the vent and aim to position it in an area that is naturally protected from direct water spray or wind-driven rain. For example, if the enclosure is mounted under an overhang or inside a sheltered area, the vent will be less exposed to the elements. Avoid cutting vents in locations where they are directly exposed to rainfall or splashing water, as this will significantly increase the risk of water ingress. Fourthly, if the enclosure is situated in an environment where water may accumulate, it is advisable to incorporate drainage features to prevent water from pooling around the enclosure and potentially entering through the vent. This can be achieved by drilling small drainage holes or creating channels that allow water to flow away from the enclosure. However, ensure that these drainage features do not compromise the enclosure's ability to protect against other environmental factors such as dust or dirt. Fifthly, in situations where a high level of protection is required, even with the presence of vent openings, it may be beneficial to consider using a NEMA 4X enclosure instead of a standard NEMA 4 enclosure. NEMA 4X enclosures offer enhanced protection compared to NEMA 4 enclosures, particularly in terms of resistance to corrosion and water ingress. They are designed to withstand more demanding environmental conditions and are often made from materials that are more resistant to chemicals and other corrosive substances. Even with vent openings, a NEMA 4X enclosure can provide a higher level of protection against water ingress compared to a NEMA 4 enclosure. In conclusion, while cutting a vent in a NEMA 4 enclosure will inevitably compromise its original NEMA 4 rating, the extent of the compromise can be minimized by taking appropriate measures. By carefully selecting a vent design that is watertight, installing it correctly using appropriate sealing materials, strategically locating the vent in a protected area, providing drainage to prevent water accumulation, and considering the use of a NEMA 4X enclosure when enhanced protection is needed, it is possible to maintain an acceptable level of protection against water ingress, even with the presence of a vent opening. It is always recommended to consult with a qualified electrical engineer or enclosure specialist to determine the most appropriate venting solution for your specific application and environmental conditions. They can provide guidance on selecting the right type of vent, determining the optimal location for the vent, and implementing appropriate mitigation measures to ensure that the enclosure continues to provide adequate protection for the equipment housed within. Furthermore, it is important to regularly inspect the vent and the surrounding area for any signs of damage or deterioration. Over time, the vent or the sealing materials may degrade, which can compromise their ability to prevent water ingress. If any damage is detected, it should be repaired promptly to maintain the integrity of the enclosure's protection. Consider using a vent with a built-in filter to further minimize the ingress of dust, dirt, and other contaminants. These filters can help to keep the enclosure clean and prevent damage to the equipment inside. Ensure that the filter is regularly inspected and replaced as needed to maintain its effectiveness. When selecting a vent, consider the airflow requirements of the equipment housed within the enclosure. The vent should provide adequate airflow to prevent overheating, but it should also be designed to prevent water ingress. There are many different types of vents available, each with its own unique features and benefits. Some vents are designed to provide a high level of airflow, while others are designed to provide a high level of protection against water ingress. Choose a vent that meets both the airflow and protection requirements of your application. If the enclosure is located in an area with high humidity, consider using a vent with a condensation drain. Condensation can form inside the enclosure due to temperature changes, and this condensation can damage the equipment inside. A condensation drain will allow the condensation to escape from the enclosure, preventing it from causing damage. When installing the vent, ensure that it is properly grounded to prevent electrical shock. The vent should be grounded to the same grounding system as the enclosure. This will help to protect personnel from electrical shock in the event of a fault. If you are unsure about how to properly install the vent, consult with a qualified electrician. They can ensure that the vent is installed correctly and safely. Remember that modifying a NEMA-rated enclosure can affect its certification and warranty. Consult with the enclosure manufacturer before making any modifications to ensure that the modifications do not void the warranty or compromise the enclosure's safety rating. In addition to the above considerations, it is also important to document any modifications that are made to the enclosure. This documentation should include the type of vent that was installed, the location of the vent, and any other relevant information. This documentation will be helpful for future maintenance and repairs. It is also important to train personnel on the proper procedures for inspecting and maintaining the enclosure. This training should include how to identify signs of damage or deterioration, how to replace the vent filter, and how to clean the enclosure. By following these guidelines, you can minimize the impact of a vent on the NEMA 4 rating of an enclosure and maintain an acceptable level of protection against water ingress.